Hi guys, I'm Caroline from Planet Houseplant, and today we are talking houseplant hacks for lazy people. Last week was people on a budget, this week is hacks for lazy people. I am both on a budget and lazy, so I know what I'm talking about. Okay, hack number one is to use a moisture meter. I didn't mention this in the budget video, even though they are normally about $7.99. And I've got the one that I use linked below. It's just from Amazon, and moisture meters have saved probably every single one of my plants from being under and overwatered. And it's not even that I used to test with my finger, which is one way of doing it. I didn't used to test them at all. I used to water them when I wanted to, but now I've got into a little routine where on a morning I go around and check all my plants with my moisture meter and water the ones that need it. I don't do it every morning. In winter I don't do it every week, but it's really helpful. So yeah, get yourself a moisture meter. They are so handy, and I couldn't recommend one enough if you don't want to get your fingers dirty. Although recently, this is just, I'm very proud of myself, a little humble brag. A lot of plant people say they can tell when their plants need watering by picking them up, because they can tell by how light they are, and I can do that now. I can't with terracotta pots, but I can with plastic ones. Super proud. Okay, hack number two is to keep a tray of water ready at all times, so that if you see your plant, you can just water it then and there. Also keep your watering can full all the time. This is so helpful because as a lazy person, sometimes I'm like, oh, this plant's a little bit, needs a bit of water, and then I'm like, I'll do that later because I'm not quite bothered now. If you've got a tray of water on the side, I just use a rabbit's litter tray. It's just a tray, and I keep it full of rainwater, so I can just put the plant in and leave it. It can bottom water, you know, if I want to top water it, fine, but I can just leave it, and I've done something to stop my plant from dying. If you don't have the room, I really don't know how to help with that. It's worth clearing a little space to, even if it's just on your desk, so you can, you know, keep on top of your watering. If you don't have the room to have a whole tray, maybe just keep a dish or something. I mean, if you say one plant, it's worth it. It just means you've got water ready. Rainwater's perfect for this because it means you can water anything, but it's also at room temperature, so you're not going to give anybody root shock by watering them with water straight from the tap. Though, small life hack, you can just put a bit of warm in to raise the temperature. They never say that. They always say leave it overnight. You don't need to. Just add a bit of warm in. You don't need to, it doesn't need to be, you just need to feel warm. It just needs to feel not cold. I'm going to find out what temperature it needs to be and I'll put it on the screen. Tip 3 is to try and keep to a schedule, not a watering schedule because you are just asking for trouble. But say every 3 days, pick, I don't know, like a Monday and a Thursday. I pick Mondays and Thursdays because I'm not at work on those days, to take care of your plants. And I go around, I check them, I check that they need watering, I check them for bugs. If you're a good plant parent, you would also dust them. I don't dust them weekly. I try and set aside a day every month and I write it in my planner to dust and fertilise my plants in the summer. In the winter, I fertilise the ones that need it, i.e. none. Even though some are growing, I probably should. But if I don't write it in my planner, I won't do it. I'm a naturally really lazy person, so I need to stay organised so that it all just doesn't just fall apart. Okay, my fourth hack is, if you're a lazy person, don't buy plants that require a lot of care. Buy things that are slow growing, that won't need very much water, that won't need repotting very often, that might not need fertilising. Plants that you can just put on the side and they will be fine. ZZ plants, perfect if you're a little bit lower light, because they've, I'm not picking it up because it's really heavy, but they store water in their tubers, so they don't need much water. Apparently you can kill them by overwatering. I'm sure I used to overwater mine and it was fine. So yeah, cacti are a good option. Succulents if you've got a small house, because you'll soon know about it if you've got a small house full of cactuses, because they will spike you all the time. This is my fifth hack, but it's linked to the fourth one. So whilst you should buy easy care, don't buy a notoriously difficult plant if you know you're not going to be bothered to look after it. So things like calathea, ferns, alocasia, fiddly figs, things that need humidity that you aren't going to give them watering and you're not going to bother. It will reduce the plants you can have a bit, but it will also open you up to plants that maybe you hadn't considered. There's loads of different epipremnums, philodendrons, although some philodendrons do need a lot of humidity, so you know, do your research if you can be bothered. My sixth tip is when you dust your plants, and I'm not here to judge you on how often you dust your plants, and I ask you extend me the same courtesy, but dust them with a little bit of neem oil rubbed onto a cloth or some kitchen towel or something, and that will deter pests. I don't like using those sticky trap things because that just seems mean. So I wash my plants with, well, I wipe my plants with neem oil, and yeah, it just keeps a lot of pests and stuff at bay. It also adds a little bit of shine to your plants without blocking the pores and stuff. It's just a really good, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's preventative care. My seventh tip is when you repot a plant, make up more potting mix than you need. So what I tend to do is when I open my bag of potting mix, or put it in another container, and then pour in perlite, pour in orchid bark, mix it all up, and then it's ready to go for the next one. Otherwise, I have a tendency to put it off. Perlite's horrible, it's really dusty. The less often you have to mix up potting mix, the better, in my opinion. That might just be the ultimate in laziness, but it's just nice to have it ready to go. And it also means you're more inclined to repot a plant when it needs potting, as opposed to doing what I would normally do, which is wait until I've got loads that need repotting. My eighth tip is one that I think everybody knows, but I didn't know before I got more into houseplants, and that is always make sure your pot has a drainage hole. It will make watering so much easier. I'm not saying every plant has to have a drainage hole, but when you water them and it doesn't have a hole, you have to tip it up and you get soil everywhere. And if you're lazy, I'm a lazy person, I would end up just probably letting it sit there or avoiding watering it altogether until I really had to, and then I would only give it a tiny bit of water. I like to really thoroughly water my plants because it means I don't have to do it as often, and I know that all the soil is evenly moist. So if you plant a plant in a pot that doesn't have a drainage hole, I think you're just causing yourself more issues than you need to. Keep it in its nursery pot, or if you're anything like me, you'll have loads of old nursery pots in your shed. Plant it in a plastic pot and then put it in a cover pot. Tip 9 is to do with fertilizer. It's not that I can't be bothered to fertilise my plants, it's just there doesn't seem to be a good way to do it. What I used to do was mark every month when I fertilised my plants, but they didn't all need watering on the same day, and it was just more hassle than it was worth. So what I am planning to do this year is top dress all my plant pots with worm castings. Well, possibly. I'm vegan and I don't know how, this sounds ridiculous, but I don't know how ethical worm castings are. I don't know the conditions in which the worms are kept. And whilst I'm not saying that worms are sentient or anything, if there's anything ethically ambiguous about it, I won't do it. Also, I have a large supply of rabbit poo because I have a large rabbit. So I'm going to research top dressing with rabbit poo, or making the disgustingly termed rabbit poo tea and then water my plants with that. Rabbits only eat plants. There's not going to be anything weird in there like fish or anything. My rabbit eats primarily hay, so there's not going to be any strong chemicals in there that like burn the roots or anything. That's what I'm going to do. Skip worm castings unless you don't have a rabbit. My 10th tip is something that I am guilty of doing. Loads of my plants are in pots that are far too big for them, and it does not help at all. It's really easy for plants to get root rot because the soil just takes so long to dry out and the plant's too small. Your plants need to be in the right size pot. For example, let me see. This calathea is probably in too big a pot. It is in too big a pot, and that's probably why I'm getting a little bit of crisping. But it is growing, so I don't think there's much point in repotting it. I'm just going to wait it out, and hopefully it'll be a couple of years before I have to repot it again. You can go up maybe a couple of pot sizes, but what I'm saying is don't buy a baby monstera and put it in a massive pot and just wait, because it will probably end up getting root rot. It'll just drown in there, you'll shock it, it won't like it, and it'll be a waste of everyone's time. We're done. That's all the lazy plant parent tips that I have. If I think of more, I'll make another video. If you have any, leave them in the comments. And I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching.